Mondstadt's ancient lore is some of the richest and most fleshed out in Genshin Impact. Far more than a starter area, Mondstadt seems to hold an important part of the scenario writer's interpretation of the classical hero's journey archetype. One rule of writing such stories is that the place where you begin must also be the door to the end. When it comes to Mondstadt, that might literally be the case.
Most of the Favonius weapon descriptions are less lore-heavy than the sacrificial weapons we've already covered, but those that aren't are quite the doozy.
Be sure to stick around to the very end to hear about my personal favorite mystery out of all of the many that exist in Mondstadt.
First few cover the tragic story of several heroes and anti-heroes in the Land of Freedom's fraught history.
I'm Ganymede.
And I am Psyche, and we will be your guides to the story of the Favonius weapons. Before we go any further, be warned that this is a lore deep dive with a little bit of theory crafting sprinkled in. There will be spoilers up to and including the most recent Sumeru Archon quest in 3.2. The Favonius Warbow. Rather than read the full description, I'd like to summarize the interesting lore bits dropped here about the history of the Knights of Favonius. The description tells us that the bow is made of oak, and its string is enchanted with the secrets of alchemy and magic to protect the wielder's fingers. It is a reward given to those deemed worthy through their service to Mondstadt. It goes on to tell us that the Outrider division was founded not by a native of Mondstadt, but by a mercenary from Liyue. He taught his division tracking and the ability to sense danger at a moment's notice, making the Outriders quite unique among all of the other divisions of the Knights at the time. It is said that eventually, for reasons unknown, he left the Knights, and without their leader's guidance, the Outriders became a shell of their former glory. This is the legacy that Amber labors to revive and uphold.
The Favonius Sword. Again, we're told of the weapon's immaculate craftsmanship, and that it's been fine-tuned to wield elemental power with ease. Does this mean these kinds of weapons are only for vision wielders? An interesting question of hierarchy for sure. It also includes the Kavat. Its bearer could do well to remember that its sharp blade is intended for defending, not attacking. It goes on to tell us that the light, swift blade work taught by and passed down by the Knights of Favonius was developed by the childhood friend and spiritual counterpart of Arundel, the Lion of Light, a man named Rostam, with the title Wolf Pup. Legend says he could chop each drop of rain out of the sky, and that the wind from his sword dance could split the rose and extinguish the torch. The titles of Wolf and Lion were given to those who showed great leadership potential, marking them for consideration for the title of Grandmaster, and Rostam gained this accolade at the age of 27. Unfortunately, he would not live to claim the title.
It is important to note that we know through other lore snippets that Rostam and Arundel lived around 500 years ago, and that Rostam perished fighting the corrupted abyss beasts that swarmed Mondstadt when the calamity befell Khaenri'ah. Rostam was also Rosalind Krushka Loafalter's lover. We, of course, know her as La Signora and the Crimson Witch of Flames. Though Arundel lived on and was at the time of Rostam's death already the Grand Master of the Knights, his grief was so great that he never fought in a battle again, and Rosalind went mad, transforming herself into the Crimson Witch of Flames with liquid fire. She would live on for another 500 years and at some point join the Fatui as a harbinger. Their stories are scattered throughout various other weapons and artifacts outside of the Favonius series that I am not going to cover in this video, including the Elegy for the End, a 5-star bow, the Defender's Will, a 4-star and lower artifact series, the Ferris Shadow, which is a 3-star claymore that is a replica of Arundelin's sword, the Heart of Bravery 4-star artifact set, and the Crimson Witch of Flames artifact set, along with several others if you keep following the threads of all three.
The Favonius Lance. The Favonius Lance is said to be used primarily in a ceremonial capacity, in parades and the like, and was said to have been developed due to the ancients noting the strength of trees, and that such weapons could be used for self-defense even by untrained plebeians. When citing its origins, the description states, "To celebrate the overthrow of the aristocracy, long stakes, flagpoles, and pitchforks were stuck all over the greenery around the city." It goes on to mention Eberhard, a controversial and enigmatic figure from Mondstadt's history, who was an illegitimate son of an aristocrat during the Lawrence family's reign of terror. He learned the spear in secret, as nobility was expected to learn swordplay. In order to become proficient in the art, he befriended a witch and learned the art until he could find a loophole in her style, using what he had learned to inevitably slay his teacher. The closing quote in this weapon's description perhaps says all we need to know about Eberhard's character. "So what if those who came after should despise me? I will do anything to achieve my goals."
The Favonius Greatsword. While the Favonius Sword speaks of a Rostam sword technique, the Greatsword's description speaks of a second Favonius technique that is now lost to time. This was that of Arundelen, and was the art of single-handedly wielding a claymore in one hand and a longsword in the other. Because of the great strength needed to wield this art, very few could master it, thus causing it to die out over time and be lost. The description goes on to again tell the story of Rostam and Arundelen's unbreakable friendship, noting that Arundelen was not a vision wielder and yet possessed unmatched strength that he gained purely through training. Every time I have to read about Arundelen, Rosalind, and Rostam, I'm like, is this Berserk? I feel like I'm reading Berserk. I'm getting Berserk vibes. The last thing the description reiterates is that Arundelen never showed his unearthly strength in battle again, with an added caveat this time, for no longer was it a source of glory to challenge ferocious monsters.
The Favonius Codex. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. I'm going to be honest, aside from the tragic 500-year-old Mondstadt trio, I felt that the Favonius Weapon Series was kind of boring, lacking something, just some seasoning, something. That is, until one day, I was idling about, out of resin, pulling my hair out, and decided to level some weapons for off characters. I had a fully refined codex. Surely someone could put it to use. And then, I read the description on a whim. I read it once. I read it again. I got up and paced around in a circle in my room. I went out on the balcony of my apartment and hollered at the sky because damn, we are saving the best for last. The Favonius Codex was created by the Knight's top scholars. It's inlaid with elemental crystals, making it extremely rare. Each codex is handmade, and it says specifically that only scholars who have mastered the elements can make such elemental crystals. Okay, same formula as the others, telling us how it was made, but then it changes tack entirely. The description then takes us back once more to the time of, or more accurately just after, the Lawrence dynasty and the founding of the Knights of Favonius. The Dawn Knight Ragnvindr, most definitely Crepus and Dieluk's direct ancestor, founded the Knights and turned the aristocracy's opulent bathhouse into a library. The very same library you can now visit in Mondstadt. The current library, though, is evidently only a fraction of the size it was in its prime. The original was destroyed by fire in an event only ever mentioned here as the Great Fire of Fall Equinox tragedy. Okay, you're thinking, but this is just more vague history on the Knights. So what? Yes, I know, but I'm not done. The last paragraph is what got me psyched, and got every gear in my head turning. Let it speak for itself. There is a large, sturdy door made of poplar wood in the library basement. It is said the door predates the founding of the library and stood firm against the smoke and the flames. The truth is, this door stood there long before the Knights of Favonius was ever founded. The Knights of Favonius officially states that the restricted section of the library is housed behind the door, but tales tell of a far more profound secret hidden within.
Now, we don't have an exact time frame for when the Knights were founded, but if it was soon after the fall of the aristocracy in...
Actually, we do know that for sure. The Knights were founded 1,000 years ago, give or take. I just forgot to correct myself before handing my notes over. Please forgive me, Psyche.
Mondstadt, that's still a good 1,000 years ago, meaning this door is really, really old. No one can answer whether or not the door was there in some form or fashion before New Mondstadt was founded. But if it was, I can't help but think maybe that door is hiding Mondstadt's own version of Enconomia. Or maybe even something related to our favorite underground nation that we keep getting so very close to, but never close enough. Conria. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I've theorized for a long time due to a lot of historical instances we have, including that when the cataclysm happened, it suggested that Mondstadt was overrun by monsters immediately, while other places like Inazuma had time before they were inundated, that Mondstadt absolutely must be literally, physically, very close to Conria.
We also can't forget that it's built into the hill directly under the giant statue of Venti that has the inscription around it reading, "Door to Celestia." Come on! It also plays into what we mentioned in the introduction of this video, the hero's journey. The hero's journey must always circle back to the beginning, before the end. Maybe that is why the Mondstadt story is still listed as simply the prologue chapter. Or maybe I'm just going nuts. Come on, Hoyoverse. What's behind the secret door? What's down there? I'm begging you.
Jokes aside, of course we can only speculate as to what this shining little breadcrumb dropped for us can mean, or what it might lead to. I guess with that said, feel free to tell us what you think about the mystical door in the comments down below.
These weapon stories continue to stitch together the massive tapestry that is Teyvat's long history. Hopefully, knowing this lore in its full scope will help make the big picture more clear to you as you continue your own journey through Teyvat. This is the Hexen Zirkel, signing off.
We hope that you'll join us for our next adventure.